guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have something a little bit different. I'm going to do a sketchbook tour for you guys. I keep my sketchbook on my iPad, so I've printed these all out so that you don't have to look at an iPad the whole video, and we can look at these a little bit more tactily. I started keeping a sketchbook again after kind of a long break, mid-2021, and I kind of started here, which is where my other sketchbooks are as well. They are more of like doodles that are meant to be kind of independent. They don't really have a lot to do with each other, and they don't often end up being final pieces. And that's kind of how I recorded things and used a sketchbook previously, and it wasn't really serving me very well, so this is kind of an updated format. So that's from November of last year. I was drawing a lot of these mushrooms. I didn't really do anything with them. The other thing I tend to use my sketchbook for is for storage of ideas. So this is a whole document that I was working on that is focused on typography in onomatopoeia for comics. So this came up when I started thinking about making my own comic, and I started to keep a little page of interesting typeface that I liked for onomatopoeia. This is a little bit more what I wanted my sketchbooks to be like. It's more of a work area than perfectly curated, finished images every time. So over here we've got some faces that I was recording from stills of Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Right here we've got some like interesting eyes that I was working on. This little area is where I was recording a bunch of little greeblies, which is stuff that is just thrown on the side of pieces that I think adds a lot of like magic and stuff to them. I got greeblies from Adam Savage, who calls the little extra bits that he glues onto his models greeblies. I think it fits at least tangentially. This is a little character design prompt that my partner gave me like the information for, and then I just kind of drew a quick little character design to match the prompt. And then we've got some kind of like notes up here. This is kind of what I was aiming for when I started keeping a sketchbook again. And I think that this was the first kind of successful page that I kept. This was like mid-January of this year. So you can see there's kind of like a huge leap between those. This one was November again, but it looks like I came back and added some like more noses. I was trying to figure out how to draw noses, and I'm still trying to figure that out, but like this is the beginning of that progress. It looks like I came back on the 3rd of February here and added a little bit more to this sheet. Here's a little bat boy that I was doodling for the comic and trying to figure out, what does a bat boy's nose look like? Is it like a human nose or a bat nose? This is the beginning of trying to figure out how hands work again. I had done a bunch of studies of this at the beginning of 2021, the end of 2020, and it was really effective, but I felt like I needed to go a little bit deeper. So these are all tracings, and then the red are sketched off to the side. The blue are the tracings, and then the red are the like not traced studies of a few different reference photos of hands. I'll do that a lot when I'm not really sure how to get the form of something. I'll do like a blue tracing, and then I'll try and draw it from the tracing by itself, like freehanding it. So this is the beginning of sort of the serious sketchbook keeping. I wanted to keep it really consistently. And so the beginning of March, I started to prioritize some time for this. So here's some more little hand studies that I was doing. Then this is a bunch of studies from the Loomis books, which I've never really found the Loomis method to work for me. There's something about how you slice up the head that I just find really confusing. So at this point, I did a bunch of studies to see if I could understand it a little better this time. And then I went looking for a different method. So this is the point where I got those simplified forms books, the Morpho simplified forms, and I started doing studies directly from that book. I wasn't doing any tracing or anything like that. I was freehanding it, like literally just from the book. There were some questions when I posted these on TikTok about like, why didn't I do something different? Like, why didn't I draw them differently from what was actually already in the book? And like, why was I doing basically just a copy? The way that I was taught to study from Masterworks was to freehand it as closely as I could to what it looked like from the reference. So I was taking the book. These aren't gonna end up being final pieces or anything. Like, I'm not using these for anything that isn't just learning. But basically what I'm doing is referencing the piece and then doing as close of a freehand drawing of it that I can in order to add it to my visual library. And that was kind of just how I was trained traditionally to study from Masterworks and from other artists' works. So these are the first kind of 2 pages. They're a little sloppy. They're a little messy. You can see that like the forms aren't quite there, but it does get better as we go along. So I kind of committed myself to doing at least like one little half-page sheet like this a day from the Morpho book and just see where that got me. So you can see this is kind of like 1 and 2. And then things start to get like a little bit more complicated. The little Morpho books aren't that big, so there's not a ton of real estate, but there are some really interesting little diagrams and stuff in there. The one thing is, when you're looking at a still image like that, you do kind of have to suss out on your own how, at what phase the image is constructed the way it is. So you have to figure out which shapes are supposed to come first, which can be kind of challenging, and is why I wanted to record time lapses for other people so that they could see kind of how I was attempting to solve those problems. So here's some more of those diagrams. We're getting into like the hands and the arms. This specific muscle group and like how that joint works has always been kind of weird for me, as well as the elbow. So it was really interesting to see that broken down in a way that was a little bit more available to me than I had previously. Also, I just really liked sort of the shape rendering of the femur. I think that that's a really interesting way to break that down. So this is more like back muscles, trying to attach those arms correctly. I thought this was just like a really beautiful hand. Here's where I started to kind of apply these to my own stuff while I was still working on those studies. So this head built with that same Morpho method, and then I started to apply that to my characters as well. This is Vesper from my comic. Here's some more clean sketches of her and Peepers the cat. I like this one with the toad. I think that's hilarious. She looks like she's got beef with that toad. He's about to be a toad soup or something. So this one was, I was trying to figure out how to do profile view using the Morpho method. So I kind of copied one from the book and then added my own like face structure to it. And then did a couple of more sort of freehand without reference. And then started to kind of add those to some drawings that I already wanted to do. This was a really funny TikTok video of this creator who was wearing a really excellent clown costume. But I liked the expression on her face, and so I wanted to kind of sketch that down. This is kind of the same thing. We've got a little bit of the Morpho stuff mixed in with some stuff. This was just a picture of someone at a punk show from Google that I had kind of changed enough so that it didn't look like the person, and then this one was just sort of from imagination. The goal here was to be able to build these forms from imagination with the simplifications and the stylizations that I wanted, which was sort of what they want to teach you with the Morpho simplified form books, so that lined up pretty good. This is more just sort of practicing drawing things from imagination with the Morpho method. This is how I was applying where the facial structures are to this kind of weird stylized giant eye, giant head style. This is some more of the Morpho like hands and arms, just to kind of get the practice in there. I really like this one, and I really like how that's wrapped around that object. This is something that I struggle with a lot, is wrapping things around. We're finally moving on to legs and kind of building whole torsos with the head. These also referenced from the Morpho book, but stylized a little bit to have a little bit longer limbs and a little bit smaller rib cage. A few of the torso studies that I did, again, just kind of trying to figure out where the shapes are coming from and how to utilize those on my own. So these ones are from the Morpho book, and then this was sort of me working out how to do the eyelids, noses, and lips for the face in my own kind of range. And then again, just like practicing noses as always, but a bunch of different profile nose shapes down here. So this is where it starts to get really fun. This is using the stuff that I have learned from the studies to interpret Studio Graphite sample packs. So I got the Studio Graphite samples from their Gumroad, and then I was just drawing from actual photo reference, but using sort of the stylized relationship of shapes that I wanted and the Morpho shapes to kind of come to something that felt more like my style. These are extremely rough. They start out so gnarly. But then by the time we get to like here, this is looking a little bit better. This face and this face really drive me nuts, but like the forms are still good and the practice was still good, and I wanted to show you guys like I'm not editing these sketchbooks to exclude the stuff that I feel like is ugly. I'm leaving it in there as much as I can unless I actually fix it in the drawing. So this was using the shapes that the Morpho book had, and I went through like a huge pack of photos from Studio Graphite and just did the feet from different angles. So this was like a whole page where I was just practicing feet using those shape patterns and kind of working from up here to down here. And by the end, I was actually really happy with how I was interpreting those. I really like this one. I think the like inner curve on that one is really nice. One of the things that I'm struggling with still that I'm going to keep practicing is just learning how to portray things from photos with lines, because lines don't exist in the real world. You just see like shapes made from shadows and light. It's kind of hard sometimes to figure out how to determine where the lines should go in a way that creates an efficient like shape language. So lots of studies like this in the future. These are a series of kind of monster, horror, spooky themed like heads that I did for fun, just for me. But like I really loved them, and I started cutting up the little bits into kind of monster time lapses, which turned out to be really fun to post, and people seem to really enjoy them. So I will definitely be continuing to do these. They get a little bit more extravagant as we go along, you'll see, but I think that these are a really cool exercise and they're really fun. Trying to convey everything about the character that you can with just the head and the neck, and adding as much like weird crap to kind of create some, I'm aiming for some kind of like mild body horror but like sophisticated and not just gore. So it's kind of like a weird fine line, but I really like these. I'm really proud of these. I really like this fungus one a lot. Here's another page of those horror heads. This mushroom one and this kind of like demon are really cool. I like how those turned out a lot. This one, I kind of hate the mask. The mask is like too far in on the face. And this one, the hair is like kind of yucky. I don't know. Should I be pointing out the things that I don't like as well? So this one I actually threw in some color and some like highlights. The print version of this went a little darker than I meant it to, but you can still kind of get what I was going for. It's the same kind of horror heads, but I was just throwing a little bit of color on a multiply layer under, and then I was throwing on a highlight layer that was a hard light mode. So those are really cool. This is kind of like mid-April. Here's the beginning of May. I'm using that same method, adding a little bit of color underneath the line art or the pencil line, and then adding a hard light layer on top that has the highlights. Same for this cute little spider girl. The color's like a little darker than I meant them to be, but that's okay. There's not a ton of these that are actually colored. So somebody asked in one of my comment sections for how to do noses. So I did this quick page of like how I'm doing noses now. I'm sure this will change. And the more comics I read and the more like really cool art I'm exposed to on Instagram and on TikTok and stuff like that, the more these kind of evolve. But this is kind of where we're at right now. I like these like exaggerated nose shapes a lot. I'm feeling really happy that like I could confidently sit down and draw noses that looked relatively similar from the front, from the 3/4, and from the side. That makes me really happy. That feels like I've progressed a lot since that first kind of page that I showed you guys. So this is a little frog witch. She's based on a frog witch tarot card that I made in 2019 for Drawloween. And the idea was so cute, I just wanted like an updated version. So I'll have to put up the time lapse or something somewhere for you guys to see this when it's finished. But I was really proud of it, and I really like this giant frog. He's really cute. This is sort of an example of when I use the symmetry mode and then just kind of cut and hack the sketch apart. So like her arms aren't completely even, and then I ended up like doing different hair, and then the frog is a little bit uneven as well. So I initially started with symmetry mode, but it looks too clean and too digital when you leave it like that. So I never do my inking with symmetry. I do the inking like I normally would, but sometimes I'll begin the sketch like this with a little bit of a symmetry sketch, just to get things kind of even. Here's some more of those creepy horror heads and some kind of like light studies with a big weird texture bristle brush. I'm really liking how the planes of the face look on this one, and I really like how the shadows are looking on these ones. I think she's so creepy. I like that one a lot. So this is a page from just last week. I was trying to come up with some interesting and fun sticker ideas based on some past streams that we did in 2020. These were some kind of like funny little monsters that I was drawing. The originals of these are so scary. I'm pretty sure they were even done in like Photoshop, like that's how old they were. But I really like these new ones. I think they came out really cute. But I really liked the like sketches. The underlayers of these are very, very cool. And then these are the most recent ones. We rescued a colony of bees last weekend, and so I spent a bunch of time drawing bees while we were working with a local keeper to have them removed and safely rehomed somewhere where they wouldn't be close to children and could like grow their colony and stuff. So here's some cute little bees and some more Vesper and Peepers. And then this is previously unnamed bat guy, who I think is going to be kind of a paranormal investigator, but he's part of probably the next story. He's not part of the comic that I'm working on right now. And that's kind of it for the sketchbook tour from November to May. Let me know if you guys liked these and we can do another one. I will have to save up a bunch more sketches for you guys to see as we move through the rest of the year and as we get closer to convention season and stuff like that. I really love keeping a sketchbook like this, and I think it's a practice that I'm going to continue. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for more content like this, please check out my recent video on lining comics and my video on redrawing one of my favorite sticker designs. You can support the channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting here on YouTube or over on Patreon. This video was brought to you by my amazing patrons, Jesse C., Anthony Jutz, Terror Billie Jean, Tuna, and Theo. Thank you guys so much for your support.